Peace and blessings and good evening. My name is David Adams and welcome to The Conscience Presents. Today we wanted to bring you a very serious show because on today, right now, during this day at some time which no one knows, there's a meeting being held right here in the city of Pittsburgh on July 13th, 2010, that is going to start something that no one in this city has any idea of what the ramifications is going to be. What we're talking about is the Pittsburgh Initiative to Reduce Crime, where today, at some secret location in a federal courtroom, where no one knows and only a few people are privy to be in this particular call-in meeting, where parolees and inmates are going to be called into a room and personally threatened that if they don't get their lives together or if some sort of violence happens in this city, that the district attorney's office, the FBI, DEA, ITF, ATF, ICE, every law enforcement agency that you can think of and I can think of is going to come down on not just them, but their friends, their families, and everybody that they know. Now, that's a big statement to make for law enforcement. And the question on today's show could not rest. We could not put it down and sit back and talk about the flowers that are growing over at the planetarium. Today we have to talk about serious issues because the life you save may be your grandson, it may be your son, or it may be your own. So get your pens and paper because we're coming back with part 2 of why crime is everyone's business. We're not going to let it go. And if you're not aware and if you don't know what's going on, I think you better put that Twinkie down, sit down, and begin to learn what's going on in this city when it comes down to crime prevention. This is very serious business right here on The Conscience Presents Part 2 of Why Crime is Everyone's Business. I'm Dave Adams. We'll be right back after this message. Peace and blessings and good evening. We wanted to come to you today with such a very serious show that we felt that it was time for us to just take a stop, wait around, take a deep breath, and come back to you and give you the information that you need. It has always been our intent to come to you with the most straight information that you will find anywhere on any public service or any other service medium. We wanted to give to you the facts about exactly what's going on, and we've been talking about this for quite some time. Now, to some of you, we may have been talking about this ad nauseum, and that is the crime and violence in this city. But we believe this, that if the African American community is going to have any place in the city of Pittsburgh, right now, we don't even have a radio station. We don't have inclusion at the table of progress in this city. We're not on the development teams, and we're not doing the things that are going to properly create the environments that we need for healthy and subtle living in this city. We need to turn things around. And the way that we put it in our motto for this slogan is to change the way we do business. If we're going to change the way we do business in this city of Pittsburgh, we have to understand what we're up against and what our hurdles will be. We particularly feel that the PIRC, the Pittsburgh Initiative to Reduce Crime and Violence, is one of these extreme programs that is going to create more harm than it is going to create good. To do that, we have to be able to know what this program's all about. We have to know the background of the program. We have to know what the city's doing. And more importantly, the city has to know what they're doing. No longer can we sit back as citizens and allow government to continue to run roughshod over us with programs and initiatives designed to help them find out research studies on our children and our young adults. No longer should we be excluded from the plans that are coming into the community when it concerns public safety. The only way that we're going to become key participants and stakeholders in our particular neighborhoods and communities is when we become more aware, when we become more intelligent with the process that is at hand. And one of those processes is to understand what the powers that be are bringing to you when they bring initiatives and strategies into our communities and into our neighborhoods to be enforced upon our young people and our young adults. This is very, very serious. To help me do that, we talked to you first about a couple weeks ago, and I'm not sure if this television station has aired this particular show of Why Crime is Everyone's Business, Part 1. But we're moving to Part 2, and if you are new to this show and you didn't catch the first one, we welcome you to this show. We've been talking about violent crime and solutions to violent crimes for a very long time. This show is a part of and a sister organization of the Conscience Group and the Conscience Newsletter, which is very, very progressive in dealing with solutions to these particular questions. One of the things that we found with our sister organization, which I am president, and I also have a guest on this show who's a member of the Conscience Group team. One of the things that we have been able to do is to put together a citizen-based statewide crime prevention concept that we are currently touring southwestern Pennsylvania throughout 7 counties to raise awareness to let you, the citizens and members of the Conscience family, know that there's an alternative to these law enforcement, government-supported efforts that continuously to come down with suppression efforts upon our children and young people in our neighborhoods. We need to find different ways to be able to combat the drug thug culture, and we're going to talk about that as well. So there's several issues that we have to look at, but one of the key things that we believe here at the Conscience Presents is the fact that you must be aware if you're going to be able to stand up to anything that is aimed at you. And to help me do that today is one of my guests and one of your favorites, and all of our favorites, Mr. Les Ludwig. Les, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Before we moved on to talking about anything else, and we have quite a few guests that want to come on and talk about their organizations and things like that, we knew that today it's July 13th.
That's right.
And sometime today, no one seems to know except a select few in the city, and you know, about this call-out meeting. And you know, a call-out meeting consists of the law enforcement agencies in this city, federal, state, county, all municipalities coming out and literally pulling these guys from all walks of this area. Particularly, I don't know if it's for the city or for the region. We don't know. No one has defined that how far this net is going to go out and round these guys up. But apparently, from this first initial meeting, they're going to be calling out inmates, they're going to be calling out parolees and guys that are on probation, calling them into a federal courtroom where they're going to threaten them that either they get their life together or they will be jailed. But not only them. The program's concept consists of threatening their families, threatening the people they hang out with, their associates, threatening their friends, and everybody, all this. Because this was originally a gang enforcement strategy, is that correct, Les?
Yes.
But what we found out is that Pittsburgh now, in developing their program, has they want to shy away from that gang description and move into more of a, well, we're talking about the bad guys. But what's wrong with that when you don't label who you're going after? What happens in this program, Les?
Well, David, you gave me a report of 27 pages from a very important organization in Washington, D.C. that did the research on the shortcomings of what is now called PIRC, Pittsburgh Initiative to Reduce Crime. I couldn't see, as a citizen, sitting back and not making that information available to the key players. And who are the key players? The mayor, council, Burgess, Ricky Burgess specifically, and other numerous parties in the financial social welfare area that would hopefully look at the failure issue of 17 cities over 20 years and turn around and look at where the shortcomings of the program are and do something so that at least if we're going to try it, if we're going to spend $200,000, if we're going to pay $7,000 to Dr. Kennedy, is he a scam? I've wondered it many times. I've said it publicly.
Well, let's take this back a little bit so we don't get too far ahead of our viewers. Let's take this back so that people can really begin to see this. Let's assume that the Conscience family has never heard of this initiative before. So let's take it and let's break it down. It's called the Pittsburgh Initiative to Reduce Crime. And what it is, it's a model, well, actually the mayor took the name from the Cincinnati Initiative to Reduce Crime, but he brought it here to Pittsburgh, and they're modeling a gang enforcement strategy that was originated in the city of Boston. It was called Operation Ceasefire, right, Les? And it is a gang enforcement, law enforcement suppression effort. And what does that mean? What that means is that the law enforcement wants to throw out a net. And what they want to do is they're going to round up as many people as they can based upon a threat that they send to criminals that they already have in custody, that they know are, or they assume is somehow related to the violence in the streets. And they say, if it doesn't stop, not only are we coming after you, we're coming after your business, or you're coming after your partners, we're coming after your family if necessary. We're coming in, we're going to use everything that the law will allow us to use. Wiretaps, this, that, whatever we need, we're going to use it to come after you. That's a pretty big threat, Les. But we found that in our studies, and this is one of the things that, because Conscience family, one of the problems that, and the reason we keep hammering this to you constantly and constantly, is because one thing has happened and one thing that we see. We sit here on a show like this, yet we've never been invited to participate in KDKA, WTAE, WPXI, to discuss anything that we're talking about today, despite the fact we've sent CDs to these stations. No one seems to want to pick up what we have been telling this city, law enforcement and everyone else, which we think most of them know, probably law enforcement already. And that is, there is no way that you can have an initiative or deal with any sort of violent crime without addressing the illicit drug issues that we highlighted in part one with our drug trend map, and we showed them, did we not, Les?
Yes, we
how
did.
the drugs are connected.
But David, further than that, we were vindicated in our position because the Trib published statistics on the front page in this past Sunday's paper, if the viewer doesn't realize it, that there's close to 5,000 people who died from overdoses, and literally listed by guns, by instruments, etc., as to how they died.
And drugs was the number one.
And drugs was the number one issue. So therefore, we feel that the position that we're taking is valid in saying that what I said today at City Council. Hopefully that the Trib would continue to publish the statistics in a small block in the corner of the front page so that it stays in front of the public, so that the public knows how dangerous the threat is. And that, God willing, could we look forward by a miracle to the day when we would have an anniversary of 1 year with no deaths.
But Les, knowledge with no action is a waste of time.
That's
Let's
right.
take a break.
That's
when we
right.
come back, we're going to start talking about some of our concerns with this
Right.
PIRC
You're
program.
right.
I'm Dave Adams. I'm sitting here with our friend and colleague, Mr. Les Ludwig, former chief investigative with the Conscience Group. Sitting with me here today, we're highlighting why crime is everyone's business right here on the Conscience Presents. We'll be right back.
Bad people, the gang members in the neighborhood. My brother, he wouldn't be happy at all if I was to tell him I was going to drop out of school. He would not approve of that, because then that's going to be two of us not handling our business.
Me and my friends are close, and we all believe in each other. I know they could graduate, even if it takes them longer than the 4 years.
We have classes together, so
we study together, we help each other with our homework.
Realized we messed up in the past.
Failed a couple classes before, not doing as much work as I should be doing. My two best friends, they keep me working hard.
jail for a gun crime, and your family serves a sentence with you.
Welcome back to The Conscience Presents. We're talking about why crime is everyone's business. This is part 2. This is 2 of a 3-part series. We will be coming back with a part 3, and we hope to bring you a Chief Harper or a Councilman Burgess, someone who can explain away some of these questions that seem to be lingering with this program. And when I say lingering with this program, Les, you and I and the Conscience Group decided that we were going to do some inside looking at this program itself. So we set an appointment and we went to see Mr. Jay Gilmer of the coordinator for the Pittsburgh Initiative to Reduce Crime and Violence. We sat down, I keep saying crime and violence, but it's crime. We sat down with him, Les, and the meeting left a lot more questions than answers, did it not?
Oh, I agree with you completely. We walked out practically in a fog. Because if you're not going to let us, we're going to get you into the meeting, you'll be at the table. We're going to try to. Limited seating space. Nothing happened. Just really no substance. And it left me with the feeling that Mr. Gilmer is the fall guy if there's a failure of this proposal that's going into effect today. And we don't need fall guys. We need results to reduce the violence.
One of the questions that came up, Conscience Family, with the PIRC program, and Les, you were there in this meeting with us when we had this meeting with the director, and the question of services came up. What type of services are going to be offered to these guys when you're threatening? Here you have somebody who may have committed a crime for whatever reason, and you pull him into this meeting, you scare the life out of him, and then you offer him what is it that we have to offer that is going to, now Mr. Gilmer said we're not trying to entice these guys. You know, we're just giving them an option of clean up or they can go to jail. Then why pull them into the meeting in the first place?
Well, it's worse. I think it's even worse than that because God forbid everybody would see these people who are going to be called in as snitches. Is someone going to try and get even?
Well, that was the second question that we came up with, but let's stay on the services aspect of it.
Services
Pittsburgh's Community Service Inc. is supposed to be supplying or providing these services to these guys.
Right.
What type of services? Because we have been
nobody knows.
No one knows what type of services.
No one knows, and that's where the problem is.
And this is, Conscious Family, this is where the problem is with an initiative like this. Now, I remember I aspired to be a city councilman at one time. You aspired to be a city councilman at one time.
No, a mayor.
A mayor. You aspired to be a mayor at one time. Several times you ran for mayor. There has to be a level of frustration. I know I'm feeling it, and I know as many times as you've gone after the position that you feel that frustration as well, that what is wrong with these people that no one is asking the right questions. When we asked Mr. Gilmer, how many people are you going to pull into this meeting, this first meeting that's happening sometime today, he said about 40, correct?
Yes.
When we asked him that if all 40 opt to have services, are you prepared to provide the type of services that they need? And what was his reply? I pray that doesn't happen because we're not ready for that. and so, you know, they're not focused on 100% participation, which some would say is probably an unrealistic expectation anyway. But let's just say, you know, what if 2/3 of that room decides that they want the services that they're supposed to be offering and the city can't offer it? Not only does the program now lose its credibility with the very people you're trying to turn around.
They're going to go the old way.
Well, I mean, if you never gain them, you have no choice but just to lose them.
All right. Well, there were many things that came up along the way, and you said them to me. I give you the credit. You ran into Chief Harper and asked him if we're going to be at the table. We're not at the table. Why is a white person, 78 years old, sitting here today? Did you ever really think about it? Dave?
No, I haven't. Should I?
Well,
Why should I think about
I'm
that?
a member of a minority called Jewish. I've had my share of anti-Semitism and non-employment because of it. I've seen the problems of the community when I was located on the Hill. It's horrendously bad. And that was from 60 until 71, roughly. So I'm not a stranger. So when I sit here for a purpose. I don't just spend the time needlessly, uselessly. We're not reaching the level where we can have a direct effect. And we know that we have something to market. We know that what we researched and ran around all of southwestern Pennsylvania to investigate, and no one is paying attention. There's a big.
Let me.
There's a big gap.
I got my
Pull me
rod.
back
I'm
in.
reeling you
Yeah,
back
you're
in.
gonna
Come
reel
on,
me
come on back
in.
in here, Les. Okay, let me reel him in, folks. Now let's go back to where we were. We're talking about the fact that we don't know. First of all, issues. Let's stick with this, and let's stick with issues. Issues are that there's a new initiative in town that's being done in secret. Why? Why is it in secret? It's a public safety initiative that's supposed to make citizens safe. What is the big secret?
Well, that's what we keep asking each other, and we don't really have an answer. Not from Gilmer, not from Chief Harper.
Well, Gilmer says to make the inmates feel safe because they're coming in. Wait a minute. Gilmer says this is being done in secret, Pittsburgh, because the inmates and the parole and probationees that are coming in this room that you're going to scare the life of, because you could have did this right in their cell or had it in the rec room in the jail. You could have called them in there and said, okay, guys, here's what you better straighten up, or, law enforcement's going to get you. Why do they take them and pull them all the way out of their comfort zones, bring them in a federal courtroom, and have all the law enforcement, the brass, the cameras, and these selected, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but these selected folks who are supposed to represent the community, which is a very big concern for me, because who is the voice of the community when it comes down to this? And who has the authority or the position or the privilege, if I might say, to choose who the voice of the community is? And what community are we talking about? All these questions, Les. So we're talking services on one end that may or may not be there. We don't even know what kind of services, but according to Mr. Gilmer, we do know what he's saying, what type of services they're offering. Driver's license, educational opportunities, job training, not jobs, but job training, okay? And was there anything else? Am I missing anything?
Well, David, it's coming from your heart, and I understand that. It's coming from mine as well. Second chance opportunities you're currently working on. So if a man's got a record, he's already in the lockup. You'll educate him. You'll turn around and you'll
educate him how, Les?
Well, if you want to send him to school or an in-house television set.
I haven't heard of any college or university or trade school that has said, "Hey, bring us these inmates. We'll take them. Bring these guys on. We'll take them and we'll try." Who is going to do that? Who is going to provide these services?
That's part of the problem, and therefore, all the reports of negative effects of the program were essentially centered on the fact of exactly the question you're asking. The services, it's good to make the statement, but it ain't there. It wasn't there in 17 cities in 20 years.
What is the danger, Les, of returning these young men back to their cells or back to their little ranges where they can go with their ankle bracelets or whatever it is that they have on after you've exposed this threat? What is to make city government think that they're dealing with a bunch of, does it sound to you like they're dealing with a bunch of high schoolers? I mean, doesn't it sound like something you would do with a high schooler? You know, you take a group of high schoolers, you pull them into a federal courtroom, you have a big judge sitting there and a whole bunch of cops sitting around, and there's a, don't you do this anymore, or we're going to do this. And you're sitting there terrified, yes, sir, yes, sir. Doesn't sound like a bunch of children, but somebody less who has killed 4 or 5 people. Somebody who's making $8,000, $10,000 a month or a week or a day behind illicit drugs.
Right.
And will do anything it takes to protect himself. What makes them think they can frighten him or scare him? And what makes them think, Les, that they can't threaten them back?
Well, I expect that there's a potential and that we may see some of that because of the fact that you've said it, and I'll use your words. If Roro has a choice of going to McDonald's or carrying 4 bags of dope over across the road for $400, which would you choose? He's probably going to choose the $400.
Well, especially if McDonald's won't hire him.
That's right, and that's worse yet because it's second chance opportunities and because we have the statement that once you're incarcerated and so on, it stays on your record, and you're working to try and change that.
Do you think that this Pittsburgh initiative to reduce crime has enough mustard to sustain itself? As Jay Gilmer said, they're just looking at this for 1 year to see what happens with this program. I get the feeling, Les, that this is going to benefit law enforcement much more than it is.
Well, it's going to give them a lot of overtime because if you're going to suppress, you got to put more troops on the street, and therefore you're going to have a bigger overtime bill. Especially right now when we're faced with not being able to pay for the pension fund. The whole thing seems to be, I've got to do something. And it said it there in that 27 pages, that many mayors, when caught with increasing statistics, end up doing what? They say, oh, come on, because we got to do something to change the nature of the program. Is that a way to handle people? Is that a way to handle finance? Is that a way to go ahead and pay $7,000 to a man who hasn't proved once, other than in Boston, that he's real?
No, the Boston program has failed.
And now that's
right. The Boston program has failed. David Kennedy has completely left the program alone. We're talking about why crime is everyone's business. And right now, we're trying to give you the highlights of why this PIRC program is so very dangerous. We're going to come back in 1 minute, and we're going to actually start laying down the bread and butter. Get your pens and paper ready. We're ready to start writing. We'll be right back right after this message.